I'm Ian Curry, this is Chasing Cars, and beside me is an absolute monster of a vehicle, quite possibly the largest thing you can drive on Australian roads with a car license. It's the 2024 Chevrolet Silverado 2500 heavy duty. And goodness me, is this thing heavy duty. It's the larger brother of the Silverado 1500. It costs $163,000 before on-road costs. That's about 30 grand more than the Silverado 1500. And instead of that smaller vehicle's 6.2 litre V8 petrol, it goes even bigger. It's a 6.6 litre Duramax turbocharged diesel V8, and it's an absolute torque monster. 1,322 Newton meters to go with 350 kilowatts of power. We're going to be having a look around it, we're going to be going through it, and of course we're going to be giving it a bit of a test drive on Aussie roads to see if it can actually fit. Okay, before we get started, do click subscribe below and let's get into this thing.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by
These things, of course, have been right-hand drive converted here in Australia by GMSV. And for 2024, there's only going to be the one grade for this niche product. It's the LTZ Premium, they call it. And it's had a little bit of a facelift than the previous one. So if you look at this giant, I think it's a really imposing, striking front end. This slightly new front grille, new fascia, C-shaped LED headlights. Still got this giant bonnet vent up front. And when you just go down a bit lower, there's these recovery hooks as well. It is a really aggressive, meaty, muscular looking thing, isn't it? What gets you first when you see this thing in profile is exactly how ginormous it is. It's 6.4 meters in length. That's a full half meter longer than a Silverado 1500 or about a meter longer than a Ford Ranger. The wheelbase itself, that's a full 4 meters. So you can imagine how vast this thing is inside. And if we just look at some of the cool stuff down the side of the vehicle, these are black 20-inch rims and they've got these Goodyear Wrangler all-terrain tires. You see this side mirror, that's an absolute huge thing as well, and it detects when you have a trailer in the back, and these parts will slide out so you can see better around the back of the caravan. Really cool feature. Speaking of cool features, come and have a look at this at the back. This is an incredibly handy side step here. Do you remember something like the Ford Ranger has one in the very back? Well, this one uses one at the front, and you really need it. Look how high up I am. I've got really no chance of getting stuff if it's slid to the front of this tub. So if I get up here, really easy, that really big base to get my foot onto, so I can easily get in, no worries at all. Look at the size of the back of this thing. If you look at the tub itself, this tonneau cover, that doesn't come standard. You've got a range of sliding hard ones or a soft one if you so choose. But certainly with this tailgate, you don't want to be lifting that and lowering it yourself. So if I just press this button on the key, there we go. Don't have to touch a thing, which is awesome because that is a heavy, big thing. And then I can simply just give that a tap, up it goes. Easy life, isn't it? You do get the tow hitch with the car as standard. You've got to buy the ball yourself. And as I mentioned, 4,500 kilograms just with that standard 70mm tow ball. As with everything else about this vehicle, the tub itself is giant, it's a monster. It's got a spray-in bed liner to keep it nice and well protected. There's no less than 12 tie but down points in here as well. The payload, that is 733 kilograms, unless you have a truck license. Then you're allowed to go to over 1,300 kilograms. But that then brings in all the complications with gross vehicle mass, etc. when you're towing. So that's something you must be conscious of if you're going to be towing something as big as 4.5 tons, is how much payload you'll be allowed in the vehicle. But don't worry, you'll be able to get plenty in here if you haven't got anything attached. I can imagine motorbikes, quad bike will fit in here, no dramas at all. This is one of the big changes for 2024 for this vehicle. It has been wholly modernized, and I must say this single luxury grade, it does feel very high spec, and as we've come to expect, Australians demand almost the best of everything when it comes to buying these big American trucks, and this is no different. I have black leather. It's quite austere in here. There's not much color going on, but these seats are very comfortable, heated, ventilated, power everything. And it's a bit of a screen overload, actually. This is the big change from before, where it had a much smaller central screen. My infotainment's now 13.4 inches, customizable. I've been using it for a couple of days now, and it is very easy to navigate. It's pretty intuitive. And the digital driver's display as well, that's a 12.3 inch unit. It's also a nice big thing. And again, what we've come to expect in this price bracket for this sort of market. Other little goodies include a digital head-up display. I've got wireless phone charging neatly in here actually. I've not seen a wireless charging there before, but it actually puts your phone in a really good spot. Wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. It's ticking a lot of boxes already, isn't it? A couple of things that I've picked up on this vehicle, being a right-hand drive conversion. I mean, overall the conversion looks spot on. It really does feel factory good. One thing I've got a bit of a problem with at $163,000 is still a column shift up here. And I've found it really quite clunky. I've not long been out of Ford's F-150, which I thought that was a lovely column shift. And when you switch the car off, it automatically goes back into drive. This one doesn't do that. So I'd like that changed on this vehicle. I think that's a bit too old school. And while the screen is very good, as I said previously, I noticed the shortcut buttons. I've got to reach all the way over here. That ideally should be relocated over here for a right-hand drive vehicle. And good news for towers, there's the brake controller here as expected, but a really interesting feature that I've not seen before is a little button on the dash, which is an exhaust brake. If you think of the giant semi-trailers that would be using that as they go down a big hill, it works very much in that way. So it will arrest you much better if you're going down a steep hill when you're towing something pretty heavy like a big caravan or something. That's a really interesting and very useful tool that I've enjoyed when we had a caravan on the back. So moving the game on is exactly how many cameras this vehicle has. I have never used a vehicle that has so many surround, rear, front, everything around bird's eye cameras, and they're pretty easy to navigate. You can just flick through. It's like a security system in a prison or something. You can just seem to get every single angle, and we used it to reverse up to hitch up the caravan and to be able to absolutely nail it exactly on where the tow hitch was. It's brilliant. And a really clever feature is it detects when you're driving, if you have a caravan on the back, it detects your steering angle. So when you reach a certain limit, it knows you're going around a corner, and it will show you down the blind side on the full screen, and it will show you exactly where the edges, the limitations of your caravan are. So that's really safe, going to stop you damaging, which is imperative when you've got something this big. The Americans and their trucks, they really don't mess around with storage, do they? You have everything here for a road trip for months, no doubt. Giant cup holders in the center. I've got more cup holders in the doors with have massive bins as well. As for dashboard storage, I've got your conventional glove box at the bottom. Also this additional one actually in the dashboard as well. Really useful for storing stuff. And this sensor thing here, that's just ideal for throwing. You can throw snacks, iPads, phones, anything. And then you've even got this esky size storage in the center. You really could get a hell of a lot of stuff in there for a serious road trip. USB ports as well hidden away there. It really is all set up for the modern adventurer. Even though we've got no trailer attached at the moment, this is a clever little unit for safety's reasons. So you input the dimensions of your trailer. Obviously, if you've got your own, that's very easily done because you'll be keeping the same thing on. And I like this. Here's a checklist. Really important to be safe when you're towing, especially something as heavy as this thing will manage. And you can just go through and make sure you've ticked every box to keep things legal and safe. Even though other road users might not like you because you're in such a big vehicle, the trade-off is how incredible it is in the back seat here. It's a magnificent place to travel. I traveled about 50 kilometers back here, and it is full business class spec. The legroom is just outrageously good. This bench seat at the back, you can fit 3 across it. In the middle here, yeah, an adult, full-size adult will sit here, and there's even enough headroom above. There's no sunroof above us here, but a special cutout indentation, so that will give you a bit more headroom. There is a front sunroof, electric sunroof. And back here, they're nicely bolstered, these seats. My only criticism would be how upright it is. I think you could forego some of this legroom if there was a sliding base, and then we could recline these a little bit more for proper luxury travel. But overall, it's very well set up. They're heated seats as well. I've got a USB-A, USB-C port, air vents as well. Of course, they're a bit small. I'd prefer them to be a bit larger considering the size of this back area. But my touch points as well, they remain very good back here. You're not feeling hard done by at all. And just at the base there, the full Bose speaker audio system in here also. So it's a dual cab ute, of course, but it almost feels like you've got an extra full level of storage back here if you want. There is just storage everywhere, more places to put your drinks if you're riding back here. And these whole seat bases lift up, revealing pretty substantial storage back there. You could put your tow ball in there if you're not using it, a range of other things that you're traveling with. And also in these seat backs, this is super clever. There's a really neat storage area in there. That would be good for valuables or something like a first aid kit, these sort of things that you might not know quite where to put it, but easy access back there. This one comes up as well. It really is an absolute monster when it comes to storage. Okay, so we are trucking. This is my first go behind the wheel of this giant Silverado heavy duty, and initial impressions are, let's look at the seating first. I mean, because you're going to be a long time in the saddle if you're driving one of these things across Australia or hauling your caravan somewhere a long distance. And yet they are very wide seat bases. No shortage of room when it comes to that. And I must say, as is key with these things, the driving position just feels very neutral, very easy and comfortable. You can see yourself laying back and having a solid few hours here without feeling too much discomfort. Adjustment auto everywhere. It really is pretty useful, pretty comfy, pretty tidy. There's a level of luxury as well that makes this thing start to look like that $163,000 is just about tolerable. I mean, when you consider the sheer capability of this thing and the right-hand drive conversion that's happened, the technology really is the final piece of the puzzle. And having these giant screens and it feeling really creature comfort, especially things like your wireless CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, my wireless phone charging, the sort of conveniences that modern buyers expect even in a truck like this. It's lost a lot of the utilitarian type feel that you might have expected with a cheaper American truck. They do many grades of this in the States, and they do a lot more entry level, more budget finishes. But here in Australia, of course, we're more niche and higher demands and higher expenditure on these things. So my surfaces are all soft touch. The dash is soft touch. It's only when you go down the doors it feels a bit cheap and tacky. And as I mentioned in the in-car, the column shift here, that really could be a lot more fluid, a lot cleaner, a lot nicer to use. That's a bit of a letdown. But overall, the technology is spot on, and I can just filter through things very easily on this touchscreen. It's a fantastic thing with many different apps that I can just navigate through. Drive-wise, I'm just cruising through town now, and immediately you notice how difficult it is to keep between the lines. Credit, there is a lane keep assist, but it's not being overly nannying, which is a very good thing, because I think if it was very strict, I'd be in all sorts of trouble, because you are on the very limits of the white lines on a road like this. But I must say, the ride itself, it feels really compliant. It is a nice settled thing. It's not overly spongy and bouncy. I'm not pogoing over everything, every little bump. So I'm not feeling nauseous or anything like that. So that's a really good first impression at low speed. Of course, you sit ridiculously high in this heavy duty. You are proper king of the road stuff. My visibility is just crackers good. Everywhere around me I can see so very well. Just for my low speed handling here, I'm in a roundabout now, and again, it's not easy keeping it between the lanes. But yes, of course, there's body roll, the steering's a bit vague, but when you consider the size of this thing, I mean, it's something like 3.7 tons. You've got so much to shift. It's such a big unit, but it's reasonably tolerable. I mean, I'm not in any way uncomfortable. I'm not feeling unsafe or anything. So it's, as we've come to discover with these American trucks, they've really upped their game when it comes to a compliant, comfortable ride. These things can just about handle a corner as well as just cruising on the highway. For 2024, there has been revisions to this 6.6 litre turbo diesel V8. That includes an upping in power and performance. So we've got 350 kilowatts and an absolutely outrageous 1,322 Newton meters. You can see why this thing could tow absolutely anything, it seems. But key, and I think for towers and for those that are just going up some steep mountain ranges, we've been told that there's 25% more power in the lower rev ranges. So that should make that low speed stuff when you really need to shift the sheer weight of this thing, that should make life a bit easier there. And I must say, there's no complaints at all. It's quite easy to live with around town. And then when you need a little bit of shove to get you through, after a bit of a delay as you'd expect, my goodness, it's just a wall of torque. It is just a very confident diesel engine with just power and torque in spades. Despite the all-terrain tyres, I can't really hear them very much at all. There's just no particularly high amount of wind speed or road noise that I'm picking up. yeah, you can hear that diesel engine sort of chugging along in the background. It's by no means a silent operator or anything, especially when you put your foot down. But overall, just when you're at speed, cruising, it really is a luxurious, pretty quiet big thing. These heavy duties, unlike some of the competition this size, do have independent front suspension, and that does just help with a little bit more of steering feel. There's a bit more suspension travel up the front as well, so again, just giving you that more modern feel, that slightly better suspension, more comfortable, compliant ride. And it's all appreciated, all this stuff. It's these little marginal gains that they keep putting in to make these things more livable with. Of course, you don't get an engine with this sort of capabilities without some trade-off, and this thing weighing what it does as well, of course, it's fuel economy, and it will sting. We're seeing about 14.5 litres per 100 kilometres using diesel. It's, I think, 136 litre tank, so it's a sizable tank. You'll be able to get decent range, but the fuel bills will be very, very expensive. We did put a 2.6 tonne caravan on the back as well, and of course the fuel economy, the figures were creeping up quite quickly on the back of that as well. It looked like we were getting well over 20 litres per 100 kilometre on the country roads, towing that 2.6 tonnes. A bit of a sticking point with this Silverado is its warranty and servicing. The warranty is only 3 years or 100,000 kilometres. When we look to something like Ford, it's given its F-150 a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, just like the rest of its cars. And there's no cap price servicing for this vehicle either. But I've done a bit of research because each dealer will charge you slightly differently depending on labour costs and its location. But I think you're looking at about $2,300 just for the first 3 years of servicing. One thing I've just done is a 3-point turn in this thing, and rest assured you need barge type space here. It is a giant thing. It's not much fun at all to move around in town, and certainly no fun at all trying to park it. Parking spaces just simply aren't big enough. We did a very mild off-road course in this vehicle, and it does have an auto-locking rear diff. It has 2-range transfer case, and it's very easy just to knock that in. You can on the fly move it into 4-wheel drive high, of course stop and pull over and move it into 4-wheel drive low. Very simple system, quite easy. I don't know how many people would off-road this too far. It certainly seems to have the capability. It's got off-road suspension, has those all-terrain tires as well. We took it up a pretty wet, slippery, but not exactly gnarly off-road course, and again, where the important thing is that it makes you feel safe and secure. The grip level and the competence and just holding on seemed really good. I'd love to see what this thing could do hardcore off-roading. I would certainly be limited by its wheelbase, exactly what you could get over and how you could turn on some of Australia's tight off-road trails. But I think the capability is certainly going to be there. And when it comes to just seeking out decent surf spots, out there camping grounds, you're going to be absolutely fine. The centerpiece just has to be this 6.6 litre V8 turbo diesel though. It really is a monster. As the Americans like to say, it really does get out of the hole when I just drop it down, and it's just the way that torque kicks in and just builds. It just feels like it would absolutely pull you forever towards the horizon. It really isn't short of performance at all. For something so heavy, it's mind-blowing. But where it matters most, of course, we took it up some pretty steep gradients. I mean, 15-20% gradients, and it's just effortless. It just pulls and pulls. It doesn't need to drop down cogs and suddenly screaming with revs or anything like that. It really is very, very trustworthy. And even if you're towing something magnificently huge on the back, you just know that this thing has all the capability and more. Remember, this is rated to 4.5 tons in Australia if you've got the car license, but in America they'll let you tow up to 9,000 kilograms with it. It really is that competent. So it's, for Australia, it's only ever going to really be working at half its capacity, which is just mind-blowing, isn't it? Of course, I still think it's an incredibly niche product, isn't it? It's a big ask to spend that extra money to get into this 2500 rather than the Silverado 1500, but of course that heavy duty chassis does make it so much more competent, so much more trustworthy when it comes to if you're towing a giant boat, giant horse float, some of these huge caravans that are coming on stream now. If you've got the money, it makes perfect sense, I suppose. You're getting all the luxury that you could ever need and just capability for days. I'll tell you something, you don't get bored of that
Duramax V8 roar. It really is a monster. I just love listening to the sound of it. It's so much fun. I'm not sure I could live with one of these unless I lived really out far bush and was towing quite regularly, but I must say, just through town, every time I squeeze that throttle, it's just a reminder of proper America under your foot. It is just a brilliant, powerful, torquey motor. A standout feature for this vehicle as well is what Chevy has fitted for those that are going to be towing. It knows so many people are going to tow with this vehicle, and it's got the 14 cameras, including 4 specifically that help form a transparent image that looks through your trailer, so to speak. So you can actually see exactly what's going on right behind you. It's a real clever system. I believe it's something of an industry first for this size of vehicle, and it just takes so much of the nightmare out of heavy towing. You feel really safe with those 14 different camera points looking over absolutely everything. I love how the way you can get the camera for the top of the trailer that you've put in. You can see exactly what's going on behind you, see the sides as you're going past bollards, trees, these sort of things. It's the sort of thing that should stop you bashing and banging not just your truck but also your van, which is the last thing you want to be doing when you're out in the wilds on your holidays.
So what's my first thoughts on the Silverado heavy duty? Well, it certainly looks tough as all hell. It's a giant vehicle, and where it matters most, that towing capability and all the clever camera systems to make things safe and user-friendly, they're top notch. It also cruises very well. I've been impressed with the suspension overall, and the cabin as well is top notch. But do you really need something this size? It is very difficult to live with around town. Will a Silverado 1500, already a massive car, will that do? And of course, it's more expensive at $163,000. I'd love to know your thoughts. Please leave them in the comments section below. Subscribe if you've not already done so. And as ever, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.